So thank you for coming back to watch a new episode of Rugspirations. We have Wanda Kerr joining us from Northern Ontario. I'm super excited. I've been looking at her book again, which I know lots of people will recognize as being the sort of color Bible that many of us rug hookers use and refer to, and probably should use and refer to more. But thank you so much, Wanda, for being here today.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm glad to be here. And I also just want to say, I'm still learning tons about color, you
Yeah,
know, even since I guess I wrote that in 2018, but I've learned so much since then. I feel almost like I could write another book.
yeah,
And I always like to tell people it's an elephant. You can only take one bite at a time to consume,
yeah.
and digest that. So yeah, we
Well,
should
I
never
kind of
worry about trying to understand it all at once because it's not possible, really.
no. No,
Yeah.
and I think like most things in for rug cooking anyway, for me, it's like endless. Like the more I think oh, now I know, and then oh my gosh, I don't know so much more.
I
Like
know. Color loves to point that out to us.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you
And
think
the
you
other
get
thing I
it.
want to say is, although we should be classified as being in Northern Ontario, we're really not. We're considered to be
Oh,
in Southwestern Ontario. We're just on the other side of Georgian Bay. It is considered Northern Ontario, but we're not for some reason.
oh,
So, yeah,
okay. I don't know my geography well. I just
it's
assumed,
okay.
to be
I just
honest.
wanted
I
to
was
say that in
thinking,
case people
Wyerton
thought I
seems
was,
north.
at Hudson's Bay or something. No,
Yeah.
I'm just on the Bruce Peninsula in the most beautiful place in the world. Yeah,
Oh, nice. Okay.
it
Well, I
is.
will remember that now.
It's okay. It's okay.
So as always, I have my sort of same questions, and we never know where they'll really take us. But I always like to start with learning about your beginning, like what or who got you started in rug hooking? Like, how did this all begin for you?
My neighbor, Marge Bruin, was a rug hooker, and she went every week and took cooking lessons at certain periods during the year. But I was a young mother and I couldn't go out at night and go and spend hours doing that. But I was fascinated by what she did. And then I had an opportunity because I designed and manufactured clothing, and I had them at a place called the Artful Shop. And she had a rug hooker who had rugs there for sale. And my first paycheck, I said, instead of money, may I please have that rug? This was a beautiful hooked rug. And so I was willing to spend quite a bit of money to get a piece of hooking. And it just so happened that my neighbor decided to teach people herself. So I took lessons from her for a couple of sessions. And then at the same time I started rug hooking, I got a computer, and those two things are completely enmeshed for me. I can't really
Oh,
separate one thing from the other. I use the computer as a tool, and it helps me understand and learn more about color. And it helps me teach too, because I can just paint right over people's things and help them see, oh, you should make it a little darker or change this color to green. And so it's all linked up for me. But I was able to get on uh, sort of a group. It was called Padula then, and it was just a listserv, which means emails just came to you. There was no
yeah.
pictures. It was like Fred Flintstone time in the internet. And I was on there for a long time, and because of everybody being from everywhere, while I was taking cooking lessons, if I had a question, I wanted to learn about something or know something, I could just ask, and like everybody would tell you different things. And there were people who were really knowledgeable, who this was their job to tell people how to do things. And they were quite loving and giving to everyone. It's not like that anymore. I remember somebody saying to me when I was talking about doing other things on the internet, they said, "Oh, you can't tell people how to do things because that'll put us out of a job." But I said that you're going to get put out of a job anyway, and that has actually come to happen because everybody just helps everybody else.
Yeah,
But it really helps everyone to learn more quickly and better, I think,
yeah,
if they have good advice, which
yeah.
we certainly had back then because people were very generous, I would say is the word. Yeah.
Well,
And
and do
so
you
that's
find
how
it
I learned.
helpful that you had different advice too? Like different
Oh, it
people, I'm
was
sure
from
had
all
really,
over.
yeah,
Yeah, rug
yeah,
cooking was and still is a little bit incredibly regional.
yeah.
You know, I remember once I met a person who always comes to Red Bay, which isn't far from here, to go to a lodge with her family every summer. It's like a tradition people have. And she was from Detroit, and she decided that we should have a rug hooking time. So my group and her group would meet at this lodge, and they had a weekend of it. And they couldn't believe our rugs. They said they're so colorful. That's like you're from Florida. And I said, oh, really? And that was kind of interesting to me because I didn't really take in
Yeah.
how different things were in different little pockets,
Yeah.
which was great for learning because I'd have all this different advice I could try out and see what worked best,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I
and then
find that to be
report back.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's true that I haven't traveled a lot, but when I have traveled, and I did go to Florida last year,
Was
and
it bright there,
it was
Robin?
very bright, but I mean, I'm pretty bright too.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't feel like it was that different, but it's kind of like, when you're in the place for a while, you end up with a tropical colored shirt or something.
Yes,
So
it
I could see
happens.
how that can happen. Um, but yeah, even with the internet, I'm still surprised of how some places, like, oh, you do it that way, or oh, you're allowed to do something. And it's
There's a
like,
lot of that, isn't
yeah,
there?
yeah, it still
Yeah, it's always
happens.
surprising to me. So that's how I learned. And then right away, a couple of people took me under their wing, and somebody said that I needed to go to teacher's workshop. And I did try to go to the Ontario one, but it wasn't running at that time. And the people that I was mostly dealing with were Americans. So they said, you should just come and become a McGowan teacher. So I'm actually a certified McGowan teacher too, and was like almost like since I started hooking because I got my work all done and
Yeah.
handed it all in. And so I think I was hooking a couple of years and I was already a teacher, which also had its kind of drawbacks because some people thought, well, what do you know? But it ended up I did know some things
Yeah.
because here I am and I'm okay. Still hooking. Yeah.
Still hooking. Yeah. Yeah.
Still hooking. Yeah.
Well, and now I find, again, I have not been around in the hooking world that long, but I meet more and more people that I'm like, or they tell me, oh, I'm a McGowan teacher, whatever. And it's like, oh,
Mhm.
so there really are, again, that was my misconception at the beginning, was McGowan was a very specific style. And
Yeah, and that's a huge
it is
misconception
so
because
wrong.
it's so wrong, and I was just right at the cusp. It was like 1999, so I was right at the cusp of, um, when things started to loosen up and change a little bit, but even at that point, people were very open, even as the teachers, to learning the way you did it. "Oh, you're gonna do it like that? Oh, let me see how that works," you
Right.
know? I
Yeah.
mean, it was a real giving and open idea about how learning could take place,
Mhm.
which I super appreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's still some of that lingering
I think it's
reputation
more to do
issue.
with personalities. That's what I always tell people. I think that has more to do with
Yeah.
certain people than actually has to do with the system itself,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Because
Yeah,
there's
just like
always,
any system.
yeah.
It's made up of the people who are in it.
At any
Yeah.
given time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. That was all your neighbors starting off
Yeah,
your
me
journey.
seeing her outside in the summer, actually, sitting in the shade. We had like no fence between us. And I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I wove, I did all kinds of other, handcrafts, but it's always been about color for me, whatever I did. I also did sewing, as I mentioned. So it's all about putting everything together and like, oh, what's going to happen with this color? And what's going to happen with that color? So I really feel happy that rug hooking and my computer have created this wonderful ball of colorful joy for me. It
Yeah.
really allows me huge latitude. Like if I just recently got my high-speed internet, and two times I got it in January, and two times the cable's been cut. Not We didn't do it.
Yeah.
It just happened. And I am like outraged. It's like somebody took all my scissors away or something.
Yeah.
How dare they? I need that like air.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. We've
it's
definitely
really
become
important
dependent.
part of
And
my
I think
process.
now more people, one of the blessings or silver linings in disguise of COVID was those that were like, no, I don't want to be on the computer, are like, okay, let me try this and see the wonders of it.
Yeah,
Um,
so I've been teaching online now. I feel like Fred Flintstone because I've been teaching online since I think it was 1990, I think. So actually teaching classes online, which just seems like eons ago.
yeah.
It was.
And
Yeah.
teaching rug cooking
No, not
online?
1990, sorry, 2000. I
Okay,
skipped
still.
I skipped 10 years because I started cooking in 1997. So it wasn't too long before I realized because I did love the computer quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I can teach people things on here, I believe. And I did, and it worked great.
Yeah.
I
Was it
think I
hard at that time to get people to
no,
try it online? No?
no.
Oh,
I think people knew my work from Padula because I ended up running it. And
okay.
so they had a lot of interaction with me. And then I started what is now the welcome mat. And a lot of people came with me to the welcome mat and they were ready for the computer. They were already on it and looking and doing things. You know what I mean? So it wasn't hard to get them to switch over. Um, and it's up to me to relate things in a way that people can understand, right? To arrive at the class in a way that I'm relaxed and happy to go any which way. That's sort of my nature anyway. Um, to be really prepared and then, oh, let's try that. Let's try this and just really be relaxed about it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not looking for anything to come out of the end of it except people have a good time and they are doing something differently maybe than they did before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even think that they think about
Yeah.
doing something differently.
Yeah. That this plant the seed.
Yeah, just plant a seed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even just throw one at them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And see if they want to catch it.
exactly.
That's a good way to look at it. Do you have a favorite part of the process? Like planning the rug, working, like doing the pulling the loops, dyeing the wool in your case, like the color
Well,
planning. I know I often ask shopping for supplies, but I imagine you dye all of your wool, so you
yeah.
won't be
I
shopping.
don't I don't do much shopping because I do also supply tons of people with wool,
Mhm.
right? Um, so what is my favorite part? It is the rug that is not yet made. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do love the actual pulling up of loops also. And I do love fixing things. So I love to problem solve when things don't go right. Um, so that I would say that's also makes me very happy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And also the that little liminal time when you don't know if what you're thinking is going to actually work. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
fascinating.
yeah, I'm a bit of a weirdo. I can't help
Well, I'm thinking a lot of people, I think, would say
it.
that moment is kind of scary for them, like a
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
It's adventuresome to me. I
Oh,
feel like, oh, anything amazing or disastrous could happen, and I don't care which one it is
right.
because I have good problem solving
Yeah.
skills, so I'm more relaxed maybe. I
Yeah.
don't think I can't solve something, I think, "Oh, I know everything I need to know." I really feel color's our only tool. Like, we're all worried about what hook we're gonna use or what backing and all that, and those things should match. We should have backing that matches our hooks, and we should have proper equipment that doesn't hurt our bodies.
Yes.
I'm really fussed up on that. Like, we don't wanna be hooking and it hurts us. But after that, the loop's only job is just to carry color information. And what information do you want to convey? Is what you picked going to make that happen? That's all the things I love about it right there.
Yeah.
You know, that little color adventure.
Is there anything that you wish you'd learned sort of at the beginning? I mean, I'm kind of thinking this might be a silly question now. Think that you did the McGowan so early, you would have had opportunity to learn a lot. Um,
Well, it's
but
interesting. We can talk about that a little
yeah,
bit because I went there to find something out. And I didn't really know what I wanted to find out. I just knew I was hungry to know. But now I know in retrospect, what I really wanted to learn about is how color acts and how it behaves.
okay.
And I think lots of times we accidentally fall into doing something correctly, but we don't really understand what happened that
Hmm.
was created.
Yep.
And so we're always kind of searching and trying to understand how something works. There's a picture of a rug in my book. It's called Dearly Beloved, and it's my cat in a garden. And I have, you know,
Wonder if I
you
can
can
find it.
find it if you want. I don't have a book here beside me, but um, there were patio stones sort of that the cat was lying on. And I asked so many people. I asked like the kings and the queens of rug hooking because I was at rug camp and no one could give me advice as to how make them learn lay down instead of stand up.
Oh,
And I
there we have it. I don't know how
Yeah, like,
valuable.
I had to try and try and try. They told me
Oh,
all kinds of color things, and some of them are still standing up because I use that to show people how I didn't understand how they'd lay down, but of course, now I know they should be ellipses, right? They're
Yeah.
too wide this way to be from that perspective. And my teenage daughter had to tell me that because she was taking art classes at school,
Yeah.
and she came home and she told me that. And I was like, oh, it actually happened with another rug, but that made me understand what happened with that one.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, see, these are the things that we should know that we don't. And to the point where I continued to go to McGowan workshop, none of that stuff that we need to know was available to us. So we were learning things in a sort of a realm or a sphere. And I realized I need to know things outside that realm. The things
Right.
I want to know are not being bandied about. And I still, right now, like I'm sort of mentoring somebody who's going to teach about a certain thing. And we talked all about how to actually dye a swatch and what it has to look like so it makes enough value difference that you get something with real depth. And we've been really having amazing and wonderful conversations about how to take what we know from B. McGowan teachers and just really blossoming up with it. You know,
Mm.
we have a lot of things that we don't do just generally as rug hookers, and our work, and they're so simple, but our work would be vastly improved by it. One of the things that she's going to do, I'm so proud of her. She showed a normal swatch that they're used to and encouraged to make. And then she made one using the method that I like, where you double dyes every single increment as you move darker. And she showed the two flowers side by side, and it's like night and day,
Yeah.
the difference between them. And I think seeing is believing. So I'm really excited to hear how everything goes for her, because I think everybody is more hungry for these knowledges, so I like to call
Yeah.
them, than we realize we are,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and I feel like it might also be that, and I again, I've not been around long enough to know what it was like in the 90s, or
Mhm,
I've not done my McGowan. Um, but I feel like the art part of it sometimes, like those lessons that we learn in art classes
mhm.
or art training are not always taught in rug cooking. And yet it's art. Like we're
Well,
making
they're
art,
not applied.
or they're not applied, but
People will talk about it. Like,
um,
let's use value as an example. That's something I've been nagging about for the last millennium. It seems like that was the first gate that I really was pressing home all the time.
okay.
And still I read and I hear and I see people talking about it without a real understanding of it. Do you know what I
Mm,
mean? Like,
yeah.
they can say the words, but it doesn't come out in their work.
Yeah.
And that's what I always am trying to encourage people. Like, it's about head and heart knowledge. So a head knowledge, you talk specifically about something, you
Mhm.
can say all the right words and everything. But when it's in your heart and it's your heart knowledge, then that is actually in your work. So it
Mhm.
becomes unified completely. So it's not
Yeah.
only your head, but it's coming out when you do your work. And so that's the wonderful step I like to encourage.
Yeah.
It's where we're actually applying these things we so-called know. We don't
Mhm.
actually know if we don't or aren't putting them
Right.
into our, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And I think you're right. When people learn the
That
lingo of like a value swatch
I
and
know.
how to use the numbers in a, in a traditionally,
Yeah. Like, you know yourself, when somebody presents an idea to you and you have a eureka moment. It's like,
yeah.
wow, you know,
Yeah.
that is what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
So I think it's so interesting when you said about we don't know what we don't know. That's like my hidden motto for the welcome mat. It's difficult for me to get subscribers because they don't know what it is, and they don't know
That they
what they
need
don't
it.
know. And they don't know the difference between knowing and knowing,
Yeah. Or
you know?
knowing and using or doing.
Yeah, like I like to say a little knowing or knowing, you know?
Yeah.
And I have been there myself. Like, I don't want to talk from the top of a mountain like an old Methuselah or something. I was, all happened to me. I
Yeah.
started off like everybody else, doing what I was told, doing it how I was told, you know? But I also had eyes, and I wanted the things that I was making to look like what I was seeing.
Mhm.
People told me it wasn't possible. And I could not see any difference between picking up a paintbrush, because I'm kind of in control of what colors I have because I can make whatever color I want. But picking up a paintbrush and using paint, mixing paint, and getting wool and doing exactly the same thing. It's all the same.
Mhm.
All the same to me, except when we do rug hooking, we have to know the exact color we need. We're not going to be mixing things
Yeah.
in the situation, right? We can't just run in with a little dab.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
have other ways that we can envision these things and make them happen in the same token.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes me curious. Do you use photos for your inspiration for your realistic
Oh, yeah.
designs? Okay.
You have to. You don't have a choice. I couldn't look at myself that long, Robin. Like, yeah, I'm definitely going to use photos just
Yeah.
because there's two schools of thought. So the rug that's behind me that we're going to
Yes,
talk
we'll
about
talk about
later,
that.
it's a cartoon. So it's not realistic. It doesn't look exactly like me. Um, and the surroundings aren't very realistic. So I like to just call that kind of work, and not in a demeaning way. It's just more cartoon like. But when I'm making something like I jokingly call it a more serious portrait, that's not cartoon like, that's more realistic, then I have to have a photo.
Yeah.
And as time has gone on, I enjoy having the photo
Mhm.
because it tells me the cues about light and shadow and things that we just can't make up.
Yeah.
We're not skilled enough to make that stuff up. We're not observant enough to be able to say, oh, there should be a shadow coming from everything. Oh no, we'll just put a shadow on the picket fence. Nothing else will have a shadow. We do
Yeah.
kind of things like that.
Yeah.
And we all have done it, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because my first teacher had us start with a photo. Like it was her photo, but we all did hosta leaves, like a zoomed in.
Mhm.
Um, and so I always use photos, but when I went to my first guild meeting, people were looking at me like, "What are you doing?"
Why would you bother looking at that? Yeah.
Yeah, or when would question some of the other ones that I had done that were based on photos, like, "Well, how did you get that angle?" And I was like, "Well, it was
Right.
already in my photo. Like, I didn't invent the angle of the window. I just copied it from my
I
picture."
know. But
So,
I know people feel like it's a mystery, but
yeah,
it's right there for you to observe.
yeah.
So I always like to say, good looking, it's good hooking. It's great hooking, as a
Yeah,
matter of fact. You can be good looking. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that is fascinating. Um, do you have a favorite foundation fabric, material, tool? Like, is there something that you're like, "I need this for my process?"
Well, so I only use linen for my backing, and I only use Micarelli linen. And the
Oh,
reason I have that is because it can do everything. I can prod through it. I can use a number 2 cut. That's the smallest cut we can have.
yeah,
And I do sometimes like to use the 1-inch cut, which is what I would use to prod, even to hook with, and it can handle all of that. And so I enjoy its versatility. Um, and
yeah,
so I just only ever use that now.
yeah.
Yeah. And from tools, depending on, like, I just finished my split brick sample for my summer series class. I have summer series every year. And for the July one, I'm using number 8 cut, but I have 5 hooks maybe that I might use for that. But I have a favorite one I've had for a million years. And I do like a bent hook, but it doesn't matter. I'll have 5 pairs of scissors and 3 or 4 hooks in my basket, and I just use whatever I feel like that day.
Mhm.
I try not to get too hidebound about loving something because I have in past lost hooks that I was super attached to. I mean, I found them years later in a box of
Yeah,
markers, right? I was doing something with my kids and everything just got gathered up. But um I try not to get so attached to something that it would prevent me from doing my actual work,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. I can,
So, and I do like to sit cross-legged when I hook. And I do like to use this strange frame if I'm sitting on the couch that's made of PVC tubing, 1-inch PVC tubing. We can't get that here in Ontario or Canada at all, I think. Somebody gave it to me, and it's a great one for sitting cross-legged on the couch. But if I'm sitting at a proper chair, I like to use a really good frame I got in St. Mary's from Debbie's Woodworking. It's super great. Swivels,
okay.
tips, has grippers. It's fairly big. I can't have one too big because it bumps into my chesticles, but it's really great.
Right.
And I love it. And I'm always telling people, and I have very good cutters too. I have a honeydew cutter and I love it so much. So yeah. And it has 3 heads on it and I prefer that. It helps refine my work when I am limited,
Yeah,
right?
keeping it simple or putting some constraints on things. Yeah.
Yeah, I do love a constraint.
Mhm.
Yeah, it helps me be more creative. So those are the tools I use and my computer, and I'm pretty happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
photos, Robin.
Yeah.
I'm making realistic work. So that rug behind me, I didn't have a photo. I found it really difficult to get that aspect proper, you
Yeah.
know, but I worked at it, but I find it harder to work without a photo than to work with,
Yeah.
for sure.
I do too. Can you describe what rug making does for you? Like, why do you keep coming to it? Because obviously you do a lot or have done a lot of different crafts and could do many different things.
I still do. Yeah.
Oh,
I
good.
still do other things. Um, well, it's about the colors for me. 100%. That's all I can say.
Mhm.
I'm just enjoying putting things together and seeing what's going to happen and the puzzles of it. I'm a real puzzle master and it gives me puzzles every day. What are you going to do next? What's this going to be like? What's going to happen here? Um, yeah, so that's helpful to me to have puzzles to solve. Did you just have a weird
I
noise?
just somebody is delivering something and my dog goes crazy.
Here,
So
I'll cough right there too.
there you
So
go.
we're all
Well,
good.
people who watch my stuff know that I have a puppy that's
Hey,
at
listen,
least
life
once doing
happens.
anything.
Life happens, doesn't it?
Um, I'm going to pull up the photo of that
Yep.
one behind you so we can all have a look and talk about the story behind it and the creation of it.
Yeah,
Um,
so I have 2 wonderful friends, Loretta Senna and Michelle Miccarelli. I mentioned her linen before. And they were having a first we had all participated in a playing card,
yes,
sort of. I forget what it's even called. You know, where a bunch of people make a playing card and they join together. I
yes.
don't know what's wrong with my English today,
I
but
know
we
what you mean,
together.
though. I've seen some of them.
I
Yeah.
guess it's a challenge or something. So they wanted to start a challenge using tarot cards, and right away they had thought about this ages ago. And I got called almost right away, and they asked me which one I wanted. And I thought the magician, because I thought that was like, alchemy and dying and all this magical mad scientist stuff. But then I was traveling when that was happening, and I had a couple of hours to myself and I was like, you know, I feel that that represents me, but I don't feel the sense of it. I can't describe it better than
Just
that.
wasn't a
I
fit.
didn't, it wasn't fitting for me. I don't know why. But anyway, I chose the high priestess and not because I am a high priestess, but what I loved was she's sort of a repository of knowledge and she sits behind a veil. Normally she has a lot of clothes on and she's sitting at a temple, but I put her in nature to be the temple and let her be natural as well. And she's holding up a mirror, and that mirror is to represent her, waiting for someone to come. Someone's coming to hear from her. So she's holding it up so you can see yourself, basically, right? And so she can see you coming also. And she's got a veil that's in front of her that's separating her from the lake and the sky and everything. And she's got her familiar. And on one side of her temple are all these symbols, pomegranate and a heart and star and all that kind of stuff. And on the other side is the birch tree. And she's sitting on a stand of books. That represents all of her knowledge. And normally she has a big wimple on, but I just gave her a headband.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It is
So,
gorgeous.
oh, thank you. It was fun to make.
And before we got on, we talked a little bit about the width of your cut. So I'm
Yeah,
curious.
number 12.
Yeah, number 12. So for people that don't use number, that's a wide piece of wool.
Yeah, it's 12 30 seconds is what it is.
Mhm.
Yeah. So not quite half an inch, but
Yeah.
just about. Yeah. And
Yeah.
lots of times I'll hand tear things too. But if you look at the books though, whenever I have to make narrow details, I'll just use a number 8 cut.
Right.
So the books are a different cut. And
Yeah.
the shadows around fretwork sort of on the owl side, it's got H in for its shadows too. So
Which
yeah,
for a lot of people, a lot of people that I've talked to find an 8 cut, a wide cut.
I
And I love
know.
that you refer to it as a narrower cut because I'm like, I love 8.
Well, it is narrow for me.
Yeah.
So in the tradition I grew up in too, an 8 cut was considered to be a wide cut.
Yeah.
But when you use a 12 cut,
Hmm.
it feels like a 3,
Yeah.
you know? So, and also if I need to, like if I needed to have a number 3 cut in there, I would have just used it. I
Yeah.
don't care what cut things are. I need to have it look like I want it to look.
Right.
And
Right.
that's all I consider. It's like if I was a painter and I was confined to using a single paintbrush, I don't think I'd care for that. I
Hmm.
want to have the whole array available to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I'm curious too, when you are planning this kind of rug, how much sort of like are you drawing a detailed
Yeah.
plan sketch and you know about what colors? Or
I
do you kind
draw everything like when I'm making a cartoon like this,
of
and I draw by hand all parts, and I'll draw several renditions of things. Like when I mean several, sometimes upwards of 20 till I get things the way I feel right about them.
yeah,
And because the first few ideas you have will be very similar to things that you've already seen. Does that make sense? Like
absolutely.
you're just fishing upon the top layer of water, I guess, if it was a lake. And each time you get an idea, it lets you see more and more of the interior of this lake, which is yourself.
Yeah.
And you finally will get down to the beautiful, cool, amazing water, clean, clear, that's you.
Mhm.
And I always try to encourage people to do several renditions of things
Mhm.
because when you're developing something, this is how some good gold comes, that real refinement. Um, yeah, so that's what I did. I had a very detailed drawing then once I knew, but I don't make a lot of drawings. Like, for instance, I don't mark every part on the skin where color should change. That's
Right.
just all one block. I don't draw my hair in. I just have like a shape.
Yeah.
Um, and then I decide how it's going to be colored. And by now, um, it's pretty easy for me to know. I know that's hard for a lot of people, but I've made so many thousands of mistakes that I sort of know I want it to be daytime. I want this to happen. It was really for me to provide the transparency of her veil. And I
Right.
wanted the moon to show fairly well too. So it's not really, daytime. It's more like, sunset kind of
Yeah.
a time. But it was a cartoon, so I didn't have to be too conscious of it having to be real in every detail, which I kind of enjoyed as well.
Yeah.
But when it came time to make the books, I wanted them to look like books. Somebody actually said, "Can you please teach a class on how to make books?" I could, but look,
Yeah.
you know,
Or pile
just
your
have to
books and
look
have a
at
look
them.
at them.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's hard for us because we're not trained to do that. And I wasn't trained to do that either. I didn't I meant lots of people think I've been to art school and everything, and I certainly haven't. And I haven't even really had an art class beyond grade 8. So it's not like I have special knowledge that's not available. But if you just keep working at something and you want to know, you'll find the people who can tell you. And I'm happy to say now I am one of those people. And I wish when you said, what do you wish you had known? I wish I had known somebody like me who could tell me the things I wanted to know. So I
Right.
think that's part of my drive, when I'm teaching people. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to do that too. Yeah,
Um, oop. Hopefully, there we go. Sorry.
that's okay. Did
Screen
you have
froze
any
for a
more
second.
questions about it?
Well, I no, I just wanted to say I love that you encourage people to do multiple. I don't have an art degree, but I've taken lots of art classes since I was
Mhm.
little. Um, and that is one of the things that we do is like you sketch, and you just keep doing it. And then when I came to rug hooking, um, that was still my go-to. And
Right.
people too, in classes I've taken, they sort of feel like, well, why isn't it good the first time?
I know because
Like,
we're not taught how to make mistakes, and that's whole part of the process. And I think that's it makes it hard on people because they want to give up. They think,
yeah,
oh, You know, but something worth having is something worth working at. We all know that. That's why we sign up to gyms and never go. We think we're just going to suddenly get slim,
Yeah,
right?
by going
Or
once.
fit. Yeah, but we have to actually go. And
Yeah.
this is the same sort of thing. And I try to avoid it sometimes too. I'm like, dang, I
Yeah.
don't feel like doing all that. But
Yeah.
we have to if we want it to be from ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the times that I've skipped that and I just went, no, I'm just going to hook and then go, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Like, this is not working, and end up pulling it all out anyway because I'm
Yeah, I've been there myself
disappointed.
many
So,
times
um,
where I think I'm just going to use this to hook this hair in here. It's going to be just fine. Finish it, just looks like nothing because I'm missing the values I need to make like the darkness and the part and all the rest of that kind of stuff. Just
mhm.
do what you see, you
Yeah.
know, then you're going to be fine. But everybody has to go through that to get to the point where they go, hey, I can do better.
Yeah.
And not everybody wants to say that.
Well, and to be fair, I think there's a place for
The easy
those
button,
people that, well, and that don't want to. They just,
right?
when I always say like that is perfect for keeping people who make the kits with the colors,
Yeah.
color coded kind of thing. Because
Yep.
I mean, many years ago, I went through my cross stitch phase and I followed the numbers and I
Yep.
put the right color, like, right
Yeah, of
being
course.
designated. But I would not be happy camper trying to do that now. So
Yeah.
there's a time and place for people that want to learn and have the capacity to absorb more. And other times you just want to pull loops and not.
Yeah. Like I call it pressing the easy button.
Yeah.
And there's a certain fastidiousness too. Like when you have a project like that and everything's like cross stitch, it's all assigned. You just do what's laid out for you. You have an expected outcome,
Yes.
right? You know what's going to happen. You know what it's going to look like at the end. And for a lot of people, that's scary,
Yeah.
to
To not have that.
dive off that shore.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what this is going to look like. And it might look terrible, but you have to fail up.
Yeah.
That makes sense. You have to make mistakes to get better, because so long as we're not making mistakes, we're actually not doing anything. Because even when we're just doing whatever we want, at the end we go,
Mhm.
what happened to that fairy I just put in that forest? She disappeared.
Yeah.
We realize it, but then sometimes we lack heart to actually do something about it too. It
Yeah.
takes like a special kind of place that we get into where we say, I want to know better. I won't be able to do better at first, but eventually I will,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And to persevere through that discomfort and through the ugly phases of things.
Yeah. And no matter what we do, I like to tell people, like, the first time you went out on a date and you'd never eaten spaghetti, say, or excuse me, but you've never had sex, you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You're in
It's
a
going to be
place
awkward.
with another person. It's not going to feel good. You're not going to know what to do. You don't know how to roll it up. Or do they roll it up? Italians don't. They just do it on the side of the plate. It's like you just don't know. I'm talking about spaghetti now, in
Yeah, I
case
got
anyone's wondering. But yeah, and it's so important that we can relax into ourselves. Like one of the things you were saying is how people come to rug cooking with knowledge, and then we kind of get treated like we don't have any,
Mm,
when we've not only brought what we've learned to this point. If I use you as an example, we have brought ourselves and our feelings and our beliefs about ourselves and how we operate. We already know what kind of learner we are, probably, but we're put into this sort of a little vessel where just do what I say, just do what I say, right?
yeah.
So it's hard because we're adults. And when it comes to teaching adults, it's not the same as teaching children. They're not a vessel we just pour information into. We have to have more latitude. And in order to do that, you have to be really knowledgeable and sure, so that anyone can hear off in any direction. Yeah, it's wonderful to be able to do that, because that's how you yourself learn as an instructor.
Yeah.
But as you said, not everybody's open to that. And that's
Well, and
okay
there's
too.
still that idea, and I think, our culture perpetuates this, that, just give me the formula and I'll do it. Like,
Yeah.
tell me the 1, 2, 3s, and then I'll be my own designer and color planner and everything. And
Yeah.
like, it's not that easy.
It isn't easy. And like I'm saying, I've been studying color very seriously since 1997
Mhm.
because I reckon right away. Well, one of the thoughts I had when I first started and I went to a hooking group, of course, I was amazed at the variety because I had not really seen anything. Excuse me. But I also did say this rudely, and I didn't mean to be rude, but I said, "Is this all that you do with this, all these colors?"
Yeah.
I did actually say that because I right away likened it to seeing everything. Everything's colored, right? Can imagine all the things we can do everything. We can do anything we see. And so that's what I was meaning. But I didn't mean to be rude, but I probably was. But that was something I thought very strongly. Is that all you do with all these amazing colors?
Yeah.
No. I was like,
Well, I think I said something similar when somebody commented about my photo. I didn't say it about color per se, but I was like, it was about the angle. Like, how did you know the angle?
yes,
I was like, because it's right here.
I
Like,
know.
and you,
But see
but
that
I,
these mysteries we have, we think it can't be done
yeah,
because our own imagination can't perceive of it.
yeah.
So therefore, when somebody, it's like a dog suddenly starts talking, we're like, what? You've done something that they couldn't imagine was possible because you're coming at the problem from a completely different angle.
Yeah.
Not to be punny,
Yeah.
but you're
Yeah.
looking at things from a new distance
Yeah.
that they're not even understanding. And I think one of
And
the greatest go
nobody
ahead.
told them it's possible. Like, nobody
But,
said,
or,
oh,
but
play
it,
with colors, do whatever you want with the color and see what happens. Nobody said that. It was much more of like, here are the colors that you use for this pattern.
yeah, because
And
of the expected outcomes,
yeah.
right? Like they need to have it turn out a certain way. And most people do want that.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember I had this wonderful friend and I loved her so much. Um, she used to tease me all the time. She was my student, but she also had been hooking a long time, longer, much longer than I had, twice as long. And I never liked making kits because I felt, or the other thing I don't particularly like to make is examples of what something should look like
Yeah.
before. So I often won't in a class show the class what it is I'm doing. I'll say, I'm having a class about this. Now, I do show things if I'm just having a Zoom class and it's not on the welcome mat because people won't buy anything they can't see.
Yeah.
So
That's why I was
I
like, oh,
have to
wow,
change
how
that.
do you do that?
Yeah. So my friend Susie used to say to me, "You go make a kit for that, Wanda?" And she was just teasing me because she knew it would get me all fired up.
Yeah.
But I don't mind making kits now because the work I'm doing is not pedantic in the way and that everybody gets the same thing.
Yeah.
So people have choices when they get a kit, and it's widely varying the differences that I create. And they have tons of latitude when they get them.
Yeah.
How are they going to use them? You know? And I
So
enjoy that. That's
I
a kit
know.
I can make. I can
Yeah.
get behind. Yeah.
And do you ever get pushback? I'm curious from somebody who's tried to make kits and gets frustrated by it as well. Pushback of like, well, my kit's not the same as my friends, or I
Oh,
don't.
they know that right away. I
Okay.
say in the description, this kit is unique to you and is only made once because
Right.
that I don't ever do the same thing twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's very laborious for me
Yeah.
because I have to make, like, I can't make 24 kits at once. Everybody gets the same thing. So I have this big array. Right now, I'm in the midst of making split brick kits, and I'll leave that open till the class is over because sometimes after class people want it, and then
Mhm.
I'll put all the things back away. But right now, I have like probably 125 colors of wool on my tabletop that I can draw from to create these things in plaids and textures. I'm not using much still wool, which to me, is solid wool. I'm using more Nancy wool where there's other colors involved and
Yep.
stripes and plaids and things like that. Yeah.
So
So mhm,
I was just going to say, tell us a little bit, or for people watching that don't know about the welcome mat that are
mhm.
curious, I will put the link. It'll be below the
Yeah,
YouTube.
yeah,
uh,
it's hard. It's interesting because it's very hard for me to explain what it is. But basically, it is the online place where I teach, and you can join for a month, you can join for 3 months, or 6, or a year long. And the rates change accordingly. So if you just wanted to see what it was like, you can join for $25. And on it, I do all kinds of things. So every month I have a lineup of things I do. So every Monday I have a class or a hooking bee. And we're having a B plus all summer where we're having a grand adventure with a magazine. So I'm using it as a design textbook and we're actually doing lessons on it. We went through it last Monday, page by page, and I explained all kinds of design things. And people love that because we never really stop and look at all these little things that are being fed to us, but it helps inform our rug cooking.
Yep.
And every Tuesday or Wednesday, I give tips. So sometimes they're about being an artist and like about making mistakes I might write about. Or sometimes I have like, this is the 10 things you should know about making a background, things to consider. And it's almost always about creativity, inspiration, and the application of color or the creation of color. And then every Friday, I have a dye show. So normally it's live, but this summer it's not because I have people home here and really I don't have my studio, right? But I think, Robin, I'm getting a studio. I think everything's coming
Together.
to fruition. Yep. I just have to be patient for a little bit longer. But yes, I think we've reached an agreement. So I'm glad about that. So I'll be back in September for sure by September, I'll be back and I'll be having my live dye shows every Friday at 11. And people can ask me questions there too, whether I'll answer them. Sometimes they get wildly off topic and I like to try to keep on the topic of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And all of this is preserved within the welcome mat for your perusal at any time. Sometimes I have a fun Saturday thing. I might decide to go along because every month we have a color theme and I have a big artist walk on the main page of this color. And I'll talk about the different parts of how the artist used the color and different points about their work. And then every Sunday I have a heart to heart where I have a little talk or I demonstrate something to people about the effective use of color or any other thing. Yeah. And then we're right back to Monday. So that happens every week. And that's what you're paying the $150 a month for, or not a month, please excuse me, a year.
Yes.
And it's really a wonderful thing to belong to. I know several people just lately have told me like the things they have wanted to know for so long, they didn't even know they wanted to know them.
Yeah.
And there it is. Because I have years of an archive in there.
Yeah.
And the other thing I do too on there is I have releases of formulas. I make a collection. The last one I did was the old Own Sound collection. So I had all these different colors from Own Sound back in the day. And that was fun. And I do that frequently too. So on top of having Friday Dye Date, I also release these collections. And Friday Dye Date always has tons of formulas in it. And they're all archived too on the welcome mat. So they're all in there. Yeah. And that I'm not even mentioning everything.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more.
Yeah.
So yeah, the welcome mat is what it's called, and the link will be there.
Yeah, I'm sorry my
yes.
elevator pitch is like for, 1,000 floor building. But it's just so hard for me to describe because it really is everything I want people to know. That's where it comes out.
Yeah.
And
Excellent.
just at the baseline, I also want to say the Friday Dye Date is free. So you just can be a member. That's what you are, Robin.
Yeah.
And every week you get an invitation and you get other things that are happening because I send out these little newsletters 2 or 3 times a week to let you know what's up. And you can join the Friday Dye Date for free.
Yeah.
It's a free part. And sometimes I invite you to come to hook-ins and things too.
So I've done that too.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything today. It's been a fabulous conversation, and I hope it inspires people to sort of dig in and learn more about color and how to actually use all that head knowledge that we have sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I just really want to tell people is my job and that I perform is one of encouragement. I want to meet the person wherever they are. And even if they just want to move 1 centimeter to the right or left or up or down from if they just want to know one little thing, like, why isn't this rug turning out the way I need it to? Why doesn't it look like what it is I'm doing? They can just come on Monday and I show them, I make a couple of little oh, if you just made this sky cool, instead of warm, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to do it because I just want to open the window.
Yeah.
That's all. Just let's look in a different direction because look up the difference it made, you know? And these little things that we miss because we don't fully understand the workings of color, or we're stuck having to always get wool from the same place, or, you know, the
Mhm.
world is out there. I
Yeah.
think it's exciting.
It is
I
so.
also, I know, I like to tell people it's like we're on the island of Hawaii. Everywhere we look, it's beautiful, but there's deserts somewhere else, you know? There probably is in Hawaii too. I'm terribly ignorant.
I don't
You
know.
know, there's huge high mountains and there's like glaciers and there's, you know, there's everything in this world. Let's look around and see what else there is. Because I think we miss having a lot of people be rug hookers because we're very narrow in our focus sometimes. And really, we can do anything with that.
Yeah, I often compare it to painting and think like how many different painting styles there are, and
It
there
is
are
the same.
more and more every day. So why can't it be the same for rug hooking? Like,
It's just a fibery expression. Instead of paint,
yeah,
we're using fabric and there is no difference. I'm just, do we have time to say one more story?
sure.
So there's a rug of me hooking a rug. And I kind
Yes,
of made it as a joke because I used to run this artist co-op, and every artist, I was the manager of it, and I gave them the window for a month. We did this with all the artists, and I was going to go last. So I made a rug of me hooking a rug, and that was all I was going to put at the window. And it was big. It's big. And I ended up not doing it because I don't remember what happened, but some some other thing happened. I don't know. Didn't matter. Somebody said to me, one of my friends said, "Oh, you should put that in this show for beginning artists." And I said, "Well, I'm really not one." And he said, "Well, for them, you are, because they don't know anything about you." And I said, "Okay." And I put it in there, and I ended up winning the prize for the beginning artist. But I had many artists come to me and say, "We had no idea person could do things like that with fabric."
Mhm.
And I said, "Do you really see any difference?"
Yeah.
And they said, "No." And I was like, "Yay."
Yeah. Mission accomplished.
Yeah, I was like, "Yay." Like but we also do that. We put ourselves in a box and we don't need to be in there.
Yeah.
We can do and be anything we like.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on.
All right. I'll talk to you again, Robin. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for chatting with me today, Wanda.
You're so welcome.